Hello and welcome to the Six Cells podcast. My name's Mike Nicholson from Six Cells. Today we're going to be speaking to Andrew Tindall from System One. But before we do, can we just say thank you to Lumen Research, the sponsors of this podcast. Lumen Research are an eye tracking technology company that are expanding our understanding of human attention and enabling brands to plan, buy, measure, and optimize according to real human attention. So thanks very much to Lumen, and welcome to Andrew. How are you?
Hey, very good, thank you. How are you?
Good, very good indeed. It's nice to see you not on LinkedIn. I think this might be the first time that I've actually met you in the flesh, as it were.
I do exist.
I feel like I know you, though, because I follow you religiously, and your posts are always excellent and informative. So good job on that.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah.
So you're at System One now, obviously. What was your career leading up to System One? What have you done in the past?
Sure. I'm from Yorkshire, but I moved to London because I was training as a doctor when I first moved to London, and then I discovered the world of alcoholic FMCG, let's call it, and just kind of marketing and business. And I eventually kind of got a degree that wasn't medicine, and then started working at Diageo quite early on in their innovation team. I was actually in the lab making booze and new products, and then kind of researching those, largely in Africa as well.
Is that like going to the dark side, like going from being a doctor to making alcohol?
Well, look, it was science to science, hey? Yeah, good point, though. Potentially. I need to unpack that one. Science to science. And then, I was also working largely for Africa as well, so it was kind of traveling and understanding that region a little bit. And then I really want to get into kind of stronger kind of the marketing side. Went to Bacardi Martini and worked in their brand activation and commercial and marketing teams for like 3.5 years, and then moved back to Diageo. I was in their whiskey brand team in GB. I somewhere along those lines, I did a marketing masters as well, kind of evening and weekends. And then 2.5 years ago, I moved to System One after a conversation with John Evans on LinkedIn, after I was becoming a bit of an effectiveness nerd, wanted to get back more into that sciencey side and researchy side. And ever since then, I've been leading our kind of thought leadership and global partnerships, and working in our marketing team.
Okay, cool. And so what is a day in the life? Well, actually, let's start with System One and then work forward to Andrew, should we? So System One is all about advertising effectiveness, and you said that you're becoming a bit of an effectiveness geek, and that's why you kind of ended up working there. How does System One help brands to understand what effective advertising looks like?
Yeah, no, great question. So at its core, we have, we do many things. We also test innovation and brand tracking as well, but our core kind of product that everyone knows us for is called Test Your Ad. We show normal consumers, not marketers, a nationally representative group of normal consumers going about their day-to-day lives, like they'd experience advertising. We show them an ad, and then we measure their branded emotional response to the advertising, and also why they feel like that, what kind of associations it brings to mind. And we use that to create kind of creative measurement metrics. Old world would have called them pre-testing, but you just talked about Lumen as well. Love Lumen. The world's moved on a little bit. It's not necessarily just pre-testing anymore. What I think our metrics can help marketers with is explaining the effect of the creative within the marketing mix. So whether that's integrating it into your MMM, or looking at your brand lift. Maybe you've got a bad brand lift on a digital platform. Well, actually, you can then measure your advertising, test your ad, and see if it was a creative or was you targeting wrong or something like this. So creative measurement via a System One way of doing things, very emotional versus kind of rational.
Okay. And how do you physically measure that? Are they strapped up to electrodes and Apple Watches and eye tracking, or how do you actually measure the emotional branded response?
Good question. You had John Kieran on this.
I did
on his podcast before.
If anyone's looking for the episodes to watch next on the Six Cells podcast, I couldn't recommend the John Kieran episode enough. I was absolutely gobsmacked and lost for words, which is not great on a podcast to be lost for words. But he was telling me about his founder story, about how he started the company. And then, in fact, I've got a LinkedIn post that I wrote after that.
The context is John Kieran's the founder of System One.
Yes.
It was called Brain Juice at the time.
Correct,
20 years ago.
So he was telling me his founder story, and this is what I wrote on LinkedIn afterwards. How long would you be it's easy for me to say, how long would you be prepared to wait before you signed your first client if you started a new business tomorrow? So John waited 3 months, 6 months, longer. How long would you wait before you thought this isn't going to work? Well, John co-founded a company, which we now know as System 1, as you say, used to be Brain Juicer, and he didn't get a client for a while. Month 1 came and went, nothing. 6 months came and went, nothing. He gave a talk to a group of students at Disneyland Paris. At that point, he'd been working for 12 months solidly every day, still not one client. I definitely would have given up by this point. But no, not John. He persevered, he changed, tested, measured, and went again. 14 months passed, nothing. Still no clients. 21 months later, he met the marketing director at UK at Nike. They did a deal. Nike was his first client, which I think we have to admit is probably a dream first client. Yeah. Could have been ideal 21 months earlier, but it's still, like what a client to start with. And now the company's going from strength to strength. So unbelievable founder story and well worth listening to, even if just for that.
I mean, John's an innovator. John's a real entrepreneur. He invented how he came up with how we measure emotion. I think it was 10 years ago for a client, which is technically called face trace, but that's what we call our IP. Which is essentially a visual game-based piece of kit where people are, which is weird because this might not sound like System 1, but they're self-reporting based on a series of pictures and then telling us how they feel and how intensely. And it might sound kind of like archaic now. Why aren't we now strapping people into things or scanning brain waves or measuring mouth movements or eye movements with a camera and stuff? But what's magical about what we've been doing for 10 years is that it works. It's predictive. So I have the absolute pleasure of working with all our partners at TikTok and LinkedIn and ITV and IPA and Effie and this stuff and Pinterest and JCDecaux, working with all their kind of in-market effects data. And my job is to create best practice and prove that emotion is how you can perform better on these platforms and in marketing in general. Every time I'm blown away that this, it works every time.
I think John said that you can predict how well a campaign's going to do in terms of ROI profit at the end based on the results of the testing of the ad, right?
There's various ways to cut it. It's a very hard thing. The research industry calls it kind of validation. What's the validate, how do you prove this works? It's hard because there's a marketing mix out there. We're trying to isolate the creative measurements. So there's lots of ways of looking at it. My favorite way, which is quite difficult to follow, but Orlando Wood, our Chief Innovation Officer, got a load of ESOV data, extra share of voice, additional media spend above your share of market size, and market share data over like a 5-year period in the UK and US. Got a load of that, measured all their advertising, and he proved that ESOV, so your additional media spend above your market size, and our star rating, which is our kind of key metric for long-term effects, explains about half of long-term market share changes when you're looking at that. That is the research that made me quit Diageo and kind of come and work at System 1, because that's so powerful. Everyone always talks about advertising being a weak force and stuff like this. Advertising is not a weak force when you look at market share changes. When you look at market share, advertising looks like a weak force. Nike's huge. They don't actually spend that much on advertising compared to their size. Apple, very similar case. But that's looking at their size. When you look at the change in dynamics in the market, quality and quantity of your advertising explains about half of all those changes, alongside price, this kind of stuff. So that was really powerful. Or another way of looking at it is ROI. We've matched our data bank to like Walk's data bank and stuff like this, and you can literally see as your metrics go up, your ROI goes up. Another way of looking at it is comparing it to brand lift studies, which everyone's kind of really kind of hooked on in digital platforms now. People who've been exposed to your digital campaign do they now say they want to buy you more or like you more? We've seen that you get massive shifts in brand lift studies if you have higher metrics of creative quality. So yeah, it's not only predictive, but we've been doing it so long as well. What's magical is that it's quite comparative, because we've got a lot of data now that you can benchmark it to, which is super important. And then also you might see the famous face tracers on LinkedIn. So after someone's kind of watched an ad and we measure all that kind of top line data, we send them back through an ad, and they tell us how they feel and whether they recognize the brand, second by second. And that, as hopefully you've seen, kind of, it's a really good way of understanding how an ad works. Seeing what emotions are caused and why, because then we share why people feel like this. So yeah, John Kieran did an amazing job, 10 years ago, and we're just kind of riding on his coattails.
Very nice, very nice. So that's system one. So what about Andrew Tindall? What does a day in the life of Andrew Tindall look like, typically, from when you open your eyes in the morning to when you eventually close them late at night?
Yeah, I have a very strange fucking job. Very strange job. So so I run that kind of global partnerships, and I do like a lot of our thought leadership, but then also part of my job is to make us famous as well. I largely do that through LinkedIn and at events and stuff like this. So I normally kind of get up quite early in the morning. And look, I have committed to growing my LinkedIn platform for the past 2 years. That requires scheduling a LinkedIn post every day. And then waking up and the first thing you do is kind of interact with it. I normally head to the gym and in between sets, reply to angry people, or that's the usual thing you get on LinkedIn these days. But yeah, interact with all the amazing commentary on LinkedIn. Like it's, I have not known marketing without LinkedIn. I've learned a lot of what I know because I find research via LinkedIn and have very interesting conversations about live case studies that are going on out there. So yeah, I spend my first hour or two in the morning trying to get some exercise in, and then kind of working on LinkedIn. And I'm thinking about, what's tomorrow? You kind of have to think about what the story is tomorrow. So yeah, and then work will kind of start. Work looks like...
So do you literally do it day by day, right? What will I talk about tomorrow? You don't have a plan laid out. You just think, right, okay, what's next?
Probably for a whole different podcast. I could talk about this for an hour because I've fallen into this, but I think it's working. Like it is working. I mean, it is Christmas, but on my LinkedIn the past week, 3 million people saw my post. Like it's such a powerful platform for building a B2B brand. It drives our business. I've got to kind of like different pillars that I always talk about and post about, formats. One of them is a face trace. Another is a cool bit of research. One's a hot take on opinion. I also have a column that I try and dissect things with. So I have different pillars, and then I'll schedule sometimes 2 weeks in advance what I would call like evergreen content. So stuff that can go live anytime. But the real hot stuff is what's happened that day, and does System 1 have some data on it that provides a unique point of view, adds value? People really want to have if you're going to spend time reading something, always want to give something away for free. That's what System 1's data is really good at, because we test everything that goes on TV in the UK and US. So either it's scheduled, or I look at something and go, that's interesting. I've got some data that will add something to this narrative, because a lot of the time on LinkedIn and X and just marketers in general talking at events, it's all very opinion based, which is great. But I think the conversation gets more interesting when we've got some data to work with. Yeah. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, so that's the first how many hours of your day?
That's the first, I'll be either 6 or 7, so that's the first 3 hours of my day, 2 hours of my day, 2 or 3 hours a day. And then we have some amazing partners that we have kind of measurement partnerships with, where we help their clients test their work and give guidance on how to do that. But what we also do is create thought leadership for them, like the recent Compound Creativity thought leadership that we released with IPA. It will be trying to get that first half of the day, getting into data, getting into some research, and working with my team to build new thought leadership, whether that's actually analysis or creating an asset like a new white paper or something, or literally building that narrative and building the comms plan out. So very much that. A lot of this at the moment, events and stuff, taking our fantastic thought leadership that we make with our partners at System 1 to events and sharing that. Meeting clients. System 1 works with some huge, amazing agencies and clients. Going in and kind of sharing our research or testing with them and trying to add value there. And also just kind of making sure the team's kind of okay and moving ahead and all the usual stuff you do when you've got a team. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, it's probably back to LinkedIn, or I finally get a couple hours to get into a spreadsheet and do some research.
Right. Well, you're doing a great job on LinkedIn. I wouldn't have. We wouldn't be talking now if it not been for your LinkedIn stuff. I follow you. I love. I always read your posts. So
Thank you.
You're doing a great job, and you made a good point there. You're giving away value. You're giving it away. It's not just I want to tell you this because this is good for our business. You're actually giving people stats and stuff that they can use.
Yeah.
I know that there's an infinite number of things that go into a TV ad, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost impossible to isolate each individual one and then figure out which of those was the bit that made it really successful.
Yeah.
But there must be trends and patterns that you see in the data over time. What are the key things that you would say are the most effective, if you like? So if you had to, I don't know, pick a color or an animal or a human or like, I don't know, like some sort of emotional situation, what are the key things that come out time and time again as being like really effective?
Great question. Sometimes people would accuse System of being kind of paint by numbers on some of the stuff. Largely on LinkedIn, this worked well because this and this. But again, one of the reasons I joined System 1 is because of the work Orlando Wood has done on advertising and creativity, where he's looked at basically salesmanship versus showmanship. Paul Feldwick and people like this also talk about this, where there's certain types of advertising that can be entertaining and broadly entertaining. Advertising with a character, a story, a clear sense of place, a narrative, preferably building on an interesting insight and a creative idea, and with humor, this kind of stuff. We call that kind of showmanship advertising, right brain stuff. That is how you make an ad that is going to build your brand long term, because it recruits new audiences, it gets attention from new audiences, it builds emotion, and it builds brand memory structure.
I think Spec Savers are outstanding at that, as an example, right? They tell a story, the brand just comes in at the end. It's almost like an aside, but you're kind of captivated to find out what's going to happen to the character.
Yeah,
it's usually amusing.
And there's two other levers I really think you can pull. And we've got reams of data kind of on that right brain piece and how to get more into it and when to be left brained as well if you really want to drive the short-term effects as well. The real money comes from those long-term brand building campaigns. So we do focus a little bit more on that. But yeah, there's two levers you can pull: distinctiveness and consistency. So, well, first it's worth noting this is all built on solid strategy and positioning, right? We're looking at the ad, but obviously we need that solid strategy and positioning that's going to move brands into the places we need them to. And we're not also looking at the media plan, we're looking at the ad. But yeah, distinctiveness and consistency. It needs to be strongly linked to your brand. You need to have unique, famous and distinctive brand assets in the ad at the right time. Often you see advertising with a logo on the entire ad and you don't get any brand recognition. They need to be baked into the story. They need to be used at the right emotional turning points, essentially. And then consistency. I've just written some huge research about consistency with the IPA, and that's going very well. And that's another half-hour conversation. But building on the same memory structures, building familiarity, lowering processing fluency, we like the familiar. So advertising that builds on the same positioning and creative idea over a long time, that's consistent with across time and space, over many years, across the mix, across assets. And that's where this idea of a fluent device comes from. It's a very nice way to hack those two things, I would call it. A repeatable brand character or idea, like "You're not you when you're hungry" or something like this. That taps into allowing you to be refreshing and enjoyable and say something new, whilst being consistent to your brand, because it's your brand character or your creative idea, and consistent. This idea can be the red thread between all your advertising.
And what Spec Saver's done really well is they've basically made Spec Savers the punchline, haven't they? You nearly lead towards they should have gone to Spec Savers, but the rest of it's the amusing bit and it sort of leads you in.
Exactly.
And then bang, that's the punchline.
I mean, again, Orlando talks a lot about humor and how it opens us up, it causes us to lean in and drives interest. And yeah, that's a great example of that because, and then at the end when you work it out, you get a little kick of enjoyment because you've finally worked out a joke. It's Spec Savers. It's rewarding to the viewer.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you've got 10 things that marketers need to leave in 2024. We're recording this in November 2024, just in case you're listening far into the future.
And why I wanted to do this as well, instead of a podcast talking about me, it's like, let's give something away.
Yeah.
These are 10 key themes that I think are interesting to everyone in marketing and we should be leaving behind in 2024.
I love that. Okay, so we're going to do it in a top of the pop style. So in at number 10, we have judging campaigns from social media commentary.
Okay, this is very salient for me. That's why it's on the list. We're seeing the John Lewis ad, the Kirk AI ad for Christmas, the Christmas Kirk ad, made with AI, and various other campaigns getting a little heat on social media. And then if you look at social listening, one of the Christmas brands got like 4,000 mentions, I think, over the past week. Kirk's sitting at like 2,000. And then these things feed like headlines in like the Daily Mail or marketing articles saying, consumers hate this. I saw an article the other day talking about how sandwiches are becoming woke. So there's woke sandwiches out there. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, this is the exact same fucking thing. No one thinks that everyone believes that sandwiches are now woke and that's representative of the sandwich experience or what everyone thinks of sandwiches. Very similar thing with advertising. What really matters is your media plan is, with a lot of big brands, it's going to get billions of impressions. It's going to reach millions and millions of people about their day-to-day lives. And the advertiser is going to be inconsequential. They're going to give it a few seconds of attention, as Lumen's shown. And it's going to create, ideally, slowly build a favorable impression for your brand for emotions. That's how advertising works. Not a few people online post-rationalizing an opinion. And I'd hate to think that, these marketers that spent, so much time building these brilliant campaigns, but then a few thousand people backlash and it turns into articles and stuff. That is not how you should judge your campaign.
No.
No.
It's almost a national sport, though, isn't it? The John Lewis ad. It's like, it's Christmas time, right? Let's all decide whether we like it or not.
That also points to another thing, like the earned press. Really is going to probably drive effectiveness. Corona was very worried during the COVID crisis. It actually did wonderful things for their business. Horrible news, and it drove their brand. So I really wouldn't want. How big must social backlash be to then impact actual sales? We've seen one recently, like the Budweiser, that really got long-term negative social press that eventually impacted sales. But
marketers are consumers as well, but typically it's the marketers or people that work in some sort of advertising, marketing type role that are backlashing. In your words, it's not the general public.
Yeah,
it's not like the people that we're actually aiming at with this ad.
Rarely, yeah. That's another piece of it as well. We marketers are too close to the industry to have an opinion on this stuff. Hence why it's so useful to bring in kind of consumers with testing and research and stuff to aid creatives and planners and marketers to make great work. Like it's the consumer's voice that matters, and that's why I really enjoy kind of getting evidence for that and supporting these campaigns that people think I've got really backfired, but in the grand scheme of things, I can't wait to the end of the Christmas period and then to see how these campaigns that are backlash have gone. But also, it's really hard to even judge that a Christmas campaign by the end of the Christmas period because these Christmas campaigns are building equity that impacts sales for years to come. So even if sales dip after Christmas and people might go, I told you so, it's a backlash. Well, let's wait. Yeah, that's irrelevant. It also could be something else. Maybe this brand got their store layout wrong and they saw sales drop 10% because of basket size change or something. Like, what we're really trying to do is isolate the creative effect. But yeah, I could go on for a while about this one.
Yeah. I reckon as well with the supermarkets, which tend to come out in force, obviously, at this time of year, the distinctiveness that you were talking about is so important, isn't it? Because you could end up watching an advert for Asda and kind of attributing it to Asda or something because there's so many adverts that are of a similar category all at the same time. So being really standing out is, like, I would say, even more important, right, at that time of year.
Yeah. Well, distinctiveness is crucial kind of all year round, but I agree. There's a lot of ads launched in November and a lot of retail ads.
And they're all Christmas themed as well. So they're all supermarkets and they're all Christmas themed and you've got to stand out inside of that sort of framework.
But it's impressive, UK Christmas advertising is the world's most consistent advertising. All the great ads have got incredible consistent themes. The Coke AI truck is the same ad. Very have released the same ad again. Cadbury have released the same ad again after 3 years. Kevin the Carrot, Aldi's been going for how long? Morrison and the oven gloves. Everyone's cluing on to how to, be effective in this period. And Asda, I've just launched their Asda gnomes. I'm sensing they might be doing that for the next 10 years, Then again, consistency, distinctiveness, and being right-brained. Everyone wakes up to it at Christmas. It's really great to see.
Yeah, for sure. So that was number 10. So number 9, pretending AI hasn't already changed the game.
Yes. So look, the consumer point, so the normal person point of view, because again, marketers spend far too much time thinking about AI as well, really. From the normal person's point of view, AI is a large language model. It's ChatGPT or Copilot on your laptop. The adoption of that and how useful that has rapidly changed perceptions, I think. So the more and more people are using it, and it's becoming more and more faster and useful. And then when you start to look, and then the first signs of, I think, it being useful in advertising, it winds people up, but I have to say, it's the Coke Christmas AI ad. We've tested it with around 1,000 people now, all the different assets in the UK and US. I think one person mentioned that they didn't like it because it was made with AI. And then I spent the last week doing interviews with so many marketing press about this. It's such a hot topic. People might say that people haven't mentioned the fact that it's AI in kind of like an advertising test like we do in the advertising environment because you've not told them it's AI, so that's not a fair test. If they knew it was AI, they'd react differently. No. There's no warnings before TV ads not yet that tell you there's AI in this ad. That's not true. What is true is that if they were told, I do think they would react differently. If you have AI as a theme in advertising, you do get some negative backlash from some people, although that's going down. You also see this amazing trend of generative AI is getting better. It's increasing. So you're seeing this kind of perceptions. Negative perceptions going down, production going better, and the perfect storm, the Coke AI, the Coke truck made with AI, has hit that, and consumers love it. I will say it's a caveat, and it's just an early sign. It's not kind of like let's give up and all AIs come for production, because AI lends itself to this kind of fuzzy world, which fuzzy kind of cartoon CGI like graphics. We've not really got to real. Really high, realistic stuff yet.
Well, that's what I was going to say to you, is because I think if it's a cartoon character, if it's Colin the Carrot, and you know that that's not real, and you know it's not pretending to be real, and so you're all right with that, right?
Yeah.
But if it was like, I don't know, the CEO of Asda, but it wasn't really, it was an AI version of it, you'd expect that to be real because that's supposed to be a human. So is there not are we not sort of stripping away a little bit some sort of honest signals or authenticity by saying, oh, look, this is a human being, but we know it's not because it's not quite?
No, it's a great question. I work with Aardman quite a bit, Max, and look, I hate to break it to you, but Wallace and Gromit are made out of clay as well. Like, come on. Well, in the original Coca-Cola Polar Bears ad, they were CGI, they were real. All AI is doing is kind of like a director's treatment on animation, really. But yeah, a good point. It can't be used for every creative idea. It lends itself to the Coke truck ad, this mystical Christmas land. Yeah. You can't swap out a live action ad, real human beings and AI and expect it to work the same. But I do think it's like the first big positive sign that, there are times you can use AI production and it's incredibly useful, and consumers either don't care or don't notice.
Right. For sure. Okay, so that was number 9. Number 8, print ads in your out of home.
Okay, this pisses me off. So it's quite a niche one. I do a lot of research with JC & Co, who are fantastic partners working in out of home. And, we've tested a lot of out of home ads with them, and we've done lots of great research, and we're doing more great research with them coming up soon in the next few months. And we've got some creative themes that do and do not work in out of home. And people still put their print ads, like, what you'll find in magazines, newspapers, this kind of stuff, into out of home, which is absurd. So we worked with Lumen to show that out of home only gets around between 1 and 2 seconds of attention, usually. Why would someone stop and read your print ad in the street? You're in your car. You might kill a family of 5 by doing that. It makes no sense. And it really points to the best practice. I mean, I even saw Byron Sharp talk about this the other day, and I hate to agree with the guy, but look, you've got a few seconds of attention. What you need to do is build refresh memory structures, build a favorable impression for your brand. What is a creative idea that's consistent with the rest of your mix, your positioning, that you'll be able to land in a few seconds and refresh brand. So people really need to stop being so shy with branding out of home. 50% of out of home ads that we've tested to date do not get brand recognition. 50% of exposures to UK out of home, people have no idea after 2 seconds what brand the ad was for. Well, that is such an opportunity to start making out of home work harder. And Jason and Co are doing brilliant things to kind of show people that. And we work with our testing to help people kind of, fix that. And that's just kind of the first job, right? Let's brand, and then what about advertising as well? Land the brand, and then what might we be doing to build, positive emotions in out of home?
Yeah, I've spoken to Mike Follett at Lumen about this, and Karen Nelson-Field at Amplified Intelligence as well. I think and it was more about digital ads, but it is exactly the same idea for out of home. Is we need to think about how long does it take for this message to land, and then are we likely to get that amount of attention in this media? I don't think we do that so much. We do it with video because we know a video is like 30 seconds long.
True.
So we need 30 seconds of attention ideally, which isn't going to happen, but we might dip in and out. But we don't do it with outdoor or MPUs online. We just put it in there and just build it and they will come. But
yeah.
Okay, so this ad format on this news site gets 2 seconds of attention on average. Okay, what can we do in 2 seconds? Because that's our window of opportunity, if you like.
Creatives often get wound up because, again, it sounds like paint by numbers, but I call it the creative realities of a media channel. Media, and this is I think it was a Peter Field quote, or it might be a Les Binet quote. Media imposes inescapable boundaries on creativity, like as you've just described. So the facts is, you can only use a certain amount of words in out of home. You have to brand a certain size. So whether that's your logo or your product or something like this, big bold colors working out of home because you're flying past it. Those are the creative realities, and then that should inform creatives to then get creative within that. How do you flex within those boundaries? How do you break them in an interesting way? So yeah, I agree.
Cool. Okay. Shit marketing panel chats. This is just 2 of us, right? So this can't be a panel. I'm just making sure we're not falling into this.
No, I have a pet beef, and it's only because of the weird job I work in where I end up at quite a lot of marketing events. And if you don't work in that side of the industry, there's a secret that the panel chats are there to plump up the people who are going to be at the event, i.e. come and see the CMO and this person and this person and this person. They're not sharing any insight or their life story with you, or they're sat on a panel which are often under-prepped. Often everyone's scared to share a real opinion. Often everyone's agreeing with each other. Often no one's sharing anything new. Just all sat around in aggressive agreement. And when you look around the room, think of the wastage of all those marketers sat in the room who've taken the afternoon off to come and see this. And everyone just sat looking at their phones because really, no matter how good the panel guest is, it's just not interesting. And it winds me up. And I refuse to go on. If you might catch me on a panel recently, but look, I refuse to go on most panels unless there's kind of something interesting going on. Either you want someone that's kind of out of marketing to bring an interesting point of view. Why not prep a bit and have some content to share to then discuss the pros and cons of, give value away, or have someone with alternative, different points of view to kind of thrash it out, or don't allow them to prep, because it's all kind of too polished. And again, everyone aligns on an opinion first. The best panel I've been part of, and because I write this column in my weekly column in The Drum, and I was opening up their marketing event recently, and Gordon at The Drum aggressively agrees with me, and we've got kind of this mission to make advertising fun again, and we opened the debate with a college rules debate. So where we got 2 different opinions, I was kind of moderating it. each person had 5 minutes to make their point, and then people were aggressively arguing with each other on the stage. It was actually enjoyable. Yeah. So yeah, ship panel chats need to go.
The aggressive agreement, I couldn't agree with more. And I think it might have been Nigel Clarkson that said that recently. Wouldn't it be good if somebody could disagree with somebody else? Because if you're in the audience, you're like, yeah, but what about that? And you want somebody on the stage to ask that question because you can't, right? Like, so it's just, it's frustrating. You're like, just, well, there's an elephant in the room here, and no one seems to be addressing it.
For sure. But look, you can't agree with me. You have to disagree with my point on ship marketing.
Oh yeah, panels. No, I think they're brilliant, and we should have more of them. There you go. There you go. Celebrities.
Okay, this is.
I don't know where we're going with this.
This is a somewhat flippant one, but so we've got to look. The key premise is brands should be building their own celebrities, not hiring celebrities into their ads to use for a year. Few issues with it. One is it's often just for a campaign, or what we now call a campaign, I would call a collection of ads, and then on to the next one, different celebrity. Often you hire a celebrity because they're current, but it's got nothing to do with the creative idea, the positioning, or the story within the ad. Or we see some celebrities that are in every kind of campaign. Like, my personal beef is David Beckham. So I live above an F45. He's outside on the window, David Beckham. He's in the AliExpress ads at the moment. He's in many Christmas ads. Stella. He's a very popular man. I used to work at Diageo, and he was the Hague Club mascot. Now I think he's launched his own whiskey or his own beer brand or something. Like, when we think about the principles of good advertising, distinctiveness, storytelling, hiring a celeb for hire is the opposite thing of what you should be doing. And
especially in the age of influencer marketing, right? Build your own influencer, have them in your advertising, have them on TikTok or wherever they need to be, but have them very distinctively yours. Yeah, and build them over time and put money behind them and have a 10-year contract with them or whatever it needs to be.
I agree. Yeah. So Hague Club at Diageo was doing that. They've worked with him for like 5 years. They were building him as an asset for the brand. Him with a glass of whiskey. Yeah, I think, probably can't really reveal research, but people, went, oh, that's a Hague asset, him within the whiskey context. So you could go with him or any celebrity and build them for a very long time. Dawn French for M&S at Christmas is a great example. Her in a Christmas outfit, I'm like, M&S, mate. Or her as a fairy, the fairy ornament, M&S. You've built her as an asset. But then you've also touched on that kind of authenticity of the age of the content creator. The key way to use a celebrity, if you really want to, and it can be a powerful way to do this, is to use them for what they're good for. So there was a Walker's ad with David Beckham and another footballer. I don't watch football, but it's got a football context, and they're watching the football and sharing crisps and stuff, and they're going to surprise football fans. That's great. They're using him to.
I think that might be Thierry Henry.
I think so too. Yeah. That's great. They're using him for what he's great for. But then there's other examples of just wedging a celebrity in. Brands should make their own celebrities if they can, but it requires investment. It will take years.
Also, I mean, this is probably for another podcast because it's probably an hour of conversation on its own. But also, David Beckham is quite divisive because if you are into football, he played for Man United. Therefore, Liverpool fans aren't going to find that particularly interesting. The Man City fans the same. So you're also alienating certain groups because he represents something in the eyes of a football fan. And it's not a win-win situation. Not like music, it's sport is very tribal, or football's very tribal.
Yeah. Or your brand.
I'd love to know how many Man City fans drink Hague whiskey versus Man United fans, and see if there was a correlation there.
Oh, and which celebs are mortal. Your brand needs to be immortal. Celebs can make a mistake. Not going to stay away from any recent examples of that. Celebs can make a mistake, and your ship might be tied to the wrong celebrity. Yeah. So completely agree.
Okay, cool. In at number 5, chasing digital trends.
Speaking of your brand, hey, I was good. I put this together very quickly. Speaking of your brand needing to be immortal, but trends are mortal. You're seeing at the moment. Well, look, I wrote a column on this. Do you know what Moodeng is?
Say again?
Moodeng, the greasy baby hippo.
Goodness me, no.
Okay. global sensation. Greased up hippo, baby hippo, very cute and infantile. People are losing the shit over it.
Right.
I'm talking like serious fame. Hundreds of millions of views on every video about this hippo in Thailand. People traveling the world to meet this hippo. And then brands, of course, are going, well, of course, we should put Moodang in some of our social content. But none of it's to do with the idea or the positioning of the brand. It's just, again, forcing a trend into your creative. I get being relevant. You can be relevant, but it has to be resonant as well. You have to create magnets, not mirrors, in terms of advertising. Not just hold up what society is saying, but your brand has to have something to say. If you show up and you put all the Moodang ads next to each other, all the bits of social content, you can't pick out what brands what from each other. So we really got to stop chasing social trends and start leaning on consistency and building a long-term strategy that lives across media channels. There's some good examples of Moodang use. I found an example of a cake shop, and their creative idea was, we make cakes that look like famous things. Fair creative idea. Well, actually, that's their positioning. Their creative idea was, we show how realistic it was, and a knife comes down and it shocks people. It's actually a cake, and they did a Moodang cake. Great. That's consistent with their strategy.
Yeah,
that's great. But forcing Moodang into your makeup brand, I'm not too sure how relevant that is.
No, I could probably, leave that. Okay. In at number 4, AV only plans, and in brackets, we need more audio.
I've become a radio nut, an audio nut. I work with Radio Centre. There are partners at System 1 who are the the body for commercial radio in the UK. I also work with Radio Centre in Ireland. I also work with our friends at Westwood One in the US, who are huge audio group. And radio and audio is massively overlooked in terms of advertising and marketing. Like I when I was working on a brand team, no plan was presented to me, or I didn't cross a plan where we should put some radio into our advertising. There's great research from Mark Ritson with the CRA in Australia, with the FE data made by Rob Britton, showing that if you just put 11%...
Sonic Brands, wasn't it? It was a few years ago.
Yes. So one, the power of Sonic brand assets, but also radio in the plan. They showed that if you put, I think it's 11% of your media plan towards radio, you saw like double your brand effects or something like this. I'm probably getting it wrong, but proving that radio in your plan really works. And then I've done some research with Radio Centre showing how radio is amazing at changing behavior, building brands. It's a great both-ism medium that can drive short and long-term effects. And it's often 6 times cheaper than TV, but it's often just as rich. A lot of TV ads are now reliant on the audio, because a lot of the time TV advertising, you've got a second screen in front of you, you're not giving it full visual attention. And people just completely overlook radio. So I'd love to see in 2025 just more people using radio.
The flip side of that, for me, is video ads with no audio. So when you see them served online, and you've got a 30-second TV advert being stuck to the bottom of a mobile page, and it's being played without audio, and you're like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. Like, I don't know what's going on there unless you've seen and heard the ad and you know the story, and that's reminding you. In which case, fair enough. But it's not a great first experience for me.
Good question. Yeah, I mean, extending that reach of larger audio on media channels like TV or kind of connected TV, or maybe you've seen it on Prime or Netflix, into other media channels. You've got to be careful, haven't you, with that? You've got to really build the right frequency and familiarity before you can start doing that. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that was number 4. Number 3. Getting towards the crescendo here. Number 3, forcing everyone into every ad, and then in brackets, inauthentic representation.
Yes. Hey, it's a subject close to my heart. I've just recently started as the Deputy Director of Intelligence at Advertising, which is an amazing group trying to make advertising representative.
Is that where you've got to head afterwards? There's
a live
event, isn't there? Yeah.
10 minutes. We're going there because the annual conference. Yeah. And so, I could talk about this for a while. The best example is probably the John Lewis Christmas ad this year only had female characters in it. And there's a lot, again, of negative backlash online, a few Daily Mail articles and stuff like this about, is this, this isn't the real world. There's no men in this. Is this a family doesn't have any men in? How can the men relate to this ad? Whereas, the year before, they didn't mind an ad with a relationship between a boy and a penguin. Representation in advertising needs to be about telling authentic stories. Humans love authentic stories, no matter who the characters are. We tested, we looked at the research I'm about to present after this, talking with Matt Ritson at Cannes. He was like, there's a lack of evidence here in terms of queer representation in advertising, whether it kind of affects effectiveness. I went and looked at 1,500 ads over the past 4 Junes in UK TV. We coded them all up for whether there was any LGBTQ representation, and then matched them to our metrics to see, are they more or less effective? They're the same. So in general, representation in advertising, especially from a LGBTQ point of view, it doesn't impact your effectiveness. It's about telling genuine, authentic stories about everyone. And the bad, that's way better than just kind of shoehorning everyone into every ad. What it's about is finding that human truth from anyone. And then marketers should want to do that for underrepresented groups because it's the right thing to do. So yeah, close to my heart, that one.
Very good. I like that. Wow, just one word in at number 2, change.
Yes. Look, we should leave change behind in 2024. We've just spent the past 12 months writing some new research called Compound Creativity with the IPA, which shows that consistent brands create advertising that works twice as hard, create campaigns that produce more very large brand effects and double the very large profit gains. And that inconsistent brands... it will cost inconsistent brands in the UK £3.5 billion in extra media spend. Change will over the next 5 years. Changing your agency, your positioning, your assets, your creative idea, your celebrities, your characters, your slogans, your soundtracks. Every year is possibly one of the most detrimental things you can do to a brand. We need to be building familiarity and lowering processing needs and building on the same memory structures and refreshing the same memory structures. Advertising is a marathon, not a sprint. And the more consistent you can be across geographies, channels, time, space, years, ads, assets, even using the same ads more, we found were more effective for advertisers.
Well, yeah, you'll get no argument from me on this one. I know I should probably be disagreeing with you because shit marketing panels, and I haven't disagreed enough. But...
aggressive agreement over here.
Yeah, which is really annoying. But I couldn't agree more. I mean, at 6Ls, we talked about people like your good self being consistent and frequent with the communications, which becomes familiar. And then if you speak to someone like Rory Sutherland or Richard Shotton, they'll tell you that we tend to like and trust people and things that were more familiar to us. Yeah. Because stranger danger and like evolutionary reasons and stuff. So having I mean, that's the Coke ad, right? The holidays are coming. That's been running for years and years and years and years. And it's now kind of a part of Christmas. It kind of becomes a part of Christmas. If you just change that and go, oh, now we're going to have an ice cream van that also sells Coke. You go, well, what's going on here?
Completely agree. A little secret is why I wear the same green suit whenever I'm creating content. You see my LinkedIn profile?
Well, I do orange. The 6Ls orange.
I wear the same green suit on LinkedIn or when I'm creating content or filming something or presenting. So I always wear this suit. I believe we've got a couple of minutes left. So what is number 1?
What is number 1? So number 1 is dull advertising.
Look, there's a massive cost of change, but then you might push back and go, look, that'll become very boring. I'd say screw you. That's not true. Yorkshire Tea has used the same ad with the Kaiser Chiefs for 7 years now. Yorkshire Tea is one of the most interesting and magnetic brands we've got in the UK. But, maybe some people might say consistency will lead to boring advertising. Well, don't be dull is my pushback. Be right-brained. Get your creative foundations, your solid positioning, your creative idea with legs, and then get right-brained with it. Keep visually consistent your brand assets. Use the same characters and stuff like this. But then you can tell different stories and land different messages within those. And there's great research called The Cost of Dull by John Evans, Adam Morgan and Peter Field, which shows there's a massive cost of being dull and boring and saying nothing interesting and being rational and left-brained. And it costs brands so much. So yeah, be consistent and then don't be dull.
Okay, awesome. Listen, you've got to go. We come in right on time. Actually, I've got 30 seconds left. So is there if one last thing that you would like to say about effectiveness Any of your top 10, what would it be?
Look, I'd say it's that point too around change. In 2025, I think we should reframe staying the course, reusing the same ad, not changing your agency, not changing your idea. We should reframe that as risky and not brave to the right thing to do. And that's what I'm going to be shouting out about for the next 12 months.
Andrew, thank you so much for being on a podcast.
No,
Absolute pleasure.